Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 11th episode of the Mercuranians Podcast. Today is Tuesday, June 7th. It's 6:05 p.m. Anchorage time.
My name is Stella. It is 7:05 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've got a little role reversal this week where Cam
I'm finally
is,
behind.
I know, I'm finally a step ahead of this kid.
I know.
If
So
that.
normally we're like trying to get Stella to wake up early to record, and now it's like we tried to record on a different day, but I think like Mars was culminating or something. It just did not work out. So
Yeah,
here we are with attempt number 2.
yes. If it fails, just start over. That's my
Yeah.
mindset, why not? Um, we have had some pretty fascinating transits. Venus ingressed into Taurus. That was wonderful. That was so nice. Oh my
Yeah, and
gosh.
like Mars, Jupiter, and Aries right now, like the world is just like coming alive again. Like I swear I can like feel the pulse of like humanity moving again, and it just feels so alive. It just feels so good.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the sun is in Gemini too, just like
Right.
facilitating all of that life. Like, yeah, the sun like looking over its shoulder at like the boys back in fucking Aries, like, how y'all doing? You need
And
a
also it's
lemonade?
looking ahead into Cancer, right? By
Yeah.
Antisica, which is what we're gonna be talking about today. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Today
do you
will
want
be
to
on
introduce
Antiscia.
the topic a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So Antiscia it's only becoming popularized again pretty recently. It was used by traditional astrologers, many of them. Manilius was one of the first astrologers that we can trace back to using that and like speaking about it in a lot of his work. We have like plenty of other astrologers in history who have used it, like Ezra and Ptolemy, but it's only really come to light like in modern astrology pretty recently. In the early 1900s, it was not popular by any means.
Right. Because I mean, pretty much, by that time, the Renaissance remnants of the tradition were pretty much gone. And so we were just relying on Alan Leo's like fusion of, theosophical views with like Western astrology. And so obviously we know there weren't much remnants of the tradition by that point at all. But obviously, since, Project Hindsight and the revival of traditional astrology, we're getting a lot of those techniques back. And one of those really powerful methods of looking at the details of chart interpretation is this concept of Antiscia, and also its counter partner, the Contra-Antiscia. And it's essentially, two different ways of looking into the symmetries in your chart.
Yeah, I
And
think that there's something that there's room for confusion with the name Antiscia and Contra-Antiscia, where it's like the idea of like domicile or detriment, like you have one that's good and one that's not, and that's not really the case.
yeah, that's a
And
really good point.
yeah, and Contra-Antiscia sounds like it's like the opposite of Antiscia, when like opposite isn't quite the right word either.
It's like a reciprocal relationship
Yes.
because they balance. And I mean, opposites balance each other, but the Contra-Antiscia relationship between the signs, which we'll get into, um, it's more like there's a mutual interest that they each have in a way where like they're working together to like accomplish this like specific thing that they're signifying. Whereas the Antiscia pairs are sort of just like two peas in a pod because of the way they reflect. And so talking about all these, reflections and symmetries, let's get some diagrams up so we can get a little bit more clear here with what we're talking about. So as you can see on this diagram here, this is, we're looking at the Antiscia pairs. And so in the beginning, when we were talking about those two different ways that we're finding the symmetries, those are going to be discovered through the cardinal axes. So one of the cardinal axes is the solstice axis, which is from 0 degrees of Cancer at the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, and then 0 degrees of Capricorn, which is the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So this is the
Right. And
first hemisphere that we're going to be flipping and reflecting across.
Right. And so like the solstice is going to be like the most summer. The
Mhm.
winter solstice is going to be the most winter, like the dead of winter. You have the least daylight,
Mhm.
whereas in the summer solstice, you have the most daylight, the most life. So we're
Right.
taking that axis between the most life and the least life and splitting that in half and looking at those comparisons.
Right.
And
And
so
you keep
and
going.
so, in doing that, we can see how, with the tropical zodiac, especially, and seasons, how at different times of year, there's going to be the same amount of daylight this time of year as there is this time of year, the same amount of daylight as there is night here. So, you can see how these connections can be made.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And so when we're looking at these reflections, we can see their, these pairs of these segments in each season line up with, like you said, equal light. And that's really the whole concept of Antiscia, is that we're finding degrees in the zodiac that share this solar sympathy or this equality in luminosity of light. And so if you think about just the sun transiting the zodiac every year, what we're actually looking at is areas where the sun would fall and we have exactly the same amount of hours of daylight. So for instance, if we just look at the very top, you know what I mean, the height of the solar light right here at 29 Gemini and 0 Cancer, these 2 degrees are said to be Antiscia because on those 2 days, the sun is pretty much going to be giving the same amount of daylight no matter where you are. They're going to be reflected. They're going to have equal light. That's this whole idea of dividing across this axis here.
Yeah, and so as you flank out through the flank, as you travel out through the zodiac, you will have that same energy in multiple different areas. You can
Mhm.
see that we have that in Gemini and Cancer,
Mhm.
in Taurus and Leo, Aries and Virgo, and then we have it continuing with Pisces and Libra, then Aqua and Scorpio, and then Capricorn and Sagittarius finally. And so, like, one of the things with Antiscia is that at face value, like, you might look at that and be like, what? Like, Aries and Virgo, like, they're not connected by element or modality. Like, that doesn't make sense. But
Mhm.
then when you have something like Antiscia, where you realize that Aries spring and Virgo fall share the same amount of daylight, then you can be like, oh, like, I do see the connection. And
Mhm.
so, hopefully, as we go through some of these pairs, you can see like how these signs are similar if you do not already.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really cool because the power that Antiscia gives us is to connect those inconjunct signs or disconnected signs or signs in inversion. And, it's not like we're construing this out of nowhere. Like this is a natural, legitimate feature, an observational feature of the zodiac and our environment. And so looking at these reflection points, just like every other thing in traditional astrology, when there's an observational effect that we can examine, it has interpretational value in the chart, no matter what kind of chart you're reading, especially today, like as we'll kind of explore it in a natal context, the idea of linking 2 of your planets together is going to merge those energies if they are Antiscia by degree. So what we're going to be looking at is kind of exploring all of these sign pairs, going through the archetypal connections that they have, and then we'll also be looking at um, the different names and kind of descriptions that the ancient astrologers used to give meaning to what this kind of interaction was like. And we'll get into that a little bit more once we talk about the Contra-Antiscia, because first we're just going to be looking at these 6 pairs, and then we're going to kind of merge everything together in terms of commanding and seeing and obeying and perceiving and all of those things once we kind of get a grasp of both of the schemes here. But we're going to start off just with Antiscia. And so, yeah, I mean, are you ready to talk about Gemini and Cancer?
Yeah, before I do that though, I
Yeah,
would like to just make a comment.
yeah.
Um, in my research, I did not see anybody like promoting using Antiscia with aspects what the primary thing that people like tend to look for, I'm not going to say that there's no value to that, but primarily what you're looking for is a conjunction. You're
Yeah.
going to want like Antisica planets to be in close proximity to one another, and that'll show a connection that those two planets have.
Yeah. And so because like we are talking about a really specific phenomena here, we're really looking for close based orbs. So we're not looking at like really large orbs. So we're talking like 2, 3, maybe 4 degrees, but really
For
like
like a
1 to
lunar
2 is going to be really powerful.
Mhm.
So yeah, and the other thing that I meant to mention earlier too with this is because they're reflected, like those degrees are going to be opposite. So for instance, when we look at Scorpio and Aquarius, 1 degree of Scorpio falls right at the beginning. But when we reflect it, when we zoom across to the other sign, it's going to be the last and the final degrees of Aquarius. Because if you think about it, the reflection point of the seasons, it's not at the beginning where you reflect to that point, because you're going to be 30 days off if you're switching to that same degree. So we're always going to be reversing it so that those degrees will like equal 30 when you add them together, basically.
Yeah. And you can subtract to figure that like number out if you want, like be all archaic with it, pen and paper. But like there's plenty of different like softwares out there and like websites that will pull this up for you.
Yeah, especially AstroSeek, which I'll just mention real quick on the traditional astrology calculator, has a really beautiful graphic that will show the points Antisica to themselves on your chart. So definitely head there if you need a good visual for this.
Yes, and also thank you, Cam, for the visuals that we have today. Cam made these lovely little graphs, infographics, whatever you want to call them. They look wonderful.
Yeah, we've got a couple more too. So we've got like 4 different ones, 2 for Antisica and Contra-Antiscia, and then 2 more to discuss a whole second topic, which we're calling quadrupotence, which is sort of this unique factor, which we'll get into towards the end of the episode that we're also really excited to explore. But yeah, you'll have to sit around to see those diagrams. But yeah, are you, is
Yeah.
there anything else you want to talk about with Antisica in general?
No, we can start going into the sign pairs.
Okay, cool. So let's switch it up. Let's start anywhere. Is there a pair you want to talk about first, or I threw you for a
I'm
loop?
like, my Taurus Mercury. I'm like, what?
I want to go in
Like,
order.
change it up. Like, no.
I feel like Cancer Gem always just gets the hype because it's,
The first.
yeah, and we're also there
Okay.
right now, so it's like, but I mean, maybe that's a good place to start because we're there.
Right,
We're
right.
like
I think,
almost
okay.
solstice.
I know. Oh my gosh, it's coming up.
I know. The sun's at 17 Gemini today. So that means the Antisica of the sun today will be at 13 Cancer.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
I vote starting with what's normal. Unless
Okay.
you want to start
No,
with
no, that's fine.
introverted.
We'll get into it.
Okay, okay. All right. So Gemini Cancer. So this is a very fascinating pair. It's one of my favorites, arguably. It's just so unique. You have this like lively mercurial energy that comes with Gemini, just this constant like search, even if there's no question that needs to be answered. And then you have the sign of Cancer that is much more docile. It can be aggressive. Crabs do have claws.
It is the fall of Mars. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's so fascinating about the way that they relate is that, well, let's sit on Cancer for a little bit longer. Cancer likes comfort. Cancer does not mind change, but only change with purpose, like not changing something just for the fun of it. I feel like something very apparent in this Antisica pair is the key words to understand. Cancer likes to understand what is happening from a more nocturnal perspective. What are the emotions at play here? What are the energies unfolding? Whereas Gemini is like, what is actually going on? Like, what ABC, what's happening here? The blend between Cancer and Gemini allows for a lot of like really fruitful psychoanalysis, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the key word you said at the end there, the psychoanalysis, like there's something about Cancer and Gemini, which is just so illuminating, like of the self, because when we're thinking about it, like it's the domicile of Mercury and the moon. And those planets have a really interesting connection because they are the lowest spheres of the planetary spheres. And so there's like this feeling that like it's like close to like the expression of what we are in a way, because when we're talking about that time of the year where there's the most amount of solar energy, it's like this production of energy and this thriving of life in that way. And so it's just interesting to think about how, like, for instance, the Mercury moon connection, like in traditional astrology, they would look at those two planets to do the delineation of the soul and the personality. They would look at the Mercury moon relationship in your chart to kind of make a description of, you know, your character as you express it. And so there's something solar about that in the way that we, you know, express our moon and our Mercury in a really direct way. Whereas, you know, those higher spheres like Jupiter and Saturn operate on that like more global perspective. So they move so much quicker. So they're going to give a more individual and nuanced, you know, expression in each of our personalities. And so I think there's just this connection between the moon and Mercury and Gemini and Cancer that's so accessible to analyzing how we express ourselves in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And like something that this pair makes me think of is the fact that it takes a village to raise a child. Like that phrase with Gemini being a double-bodied sign and then Cancer being the sign of like the womb and stuff like that,
Yeah.
with Mercury ruling children. Like I just feel like that phrase really jumps out with this pair.
Something else that I think is interesting is like it's the first and 12th house of the Thema Mundi. And so it's like there's this entrance and like exit into like reality itself, where it's like there's this feeling of straddling the mind and then the world around you, because it's like the moon is like the physical world, right, and fortune and things as they are physically, and then, you know, our Mercury is kind of like our mind internally, and that connection is like ourselves internally as we express it to other people and how we ground ourselves into our environment around us. And so there's this feeling of like Gemini and Cancer, like this, you know, your thought process and how you make connections with people, or even, you know, how you start to learn as a child. You know, it's like these are these really early signs in the zodiac as well. So there's something developmental and early in the stages that these signs kind of have their archetypes involved with as well. Like kind of like thinking of like toddler years and years like with your family and your parents, like those really formative years of your personality that are going to be crucial to, you know, how you express yourself as a person too, that I think is relevant with it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that you just said that like perfectly. Um, I mean, we could sit and talk about Gemini and Cancer for the rest of the episode.
I know. There was just two more things I wanted to say. Okay, so the first thing was that I actually named this pair like the architect, because I feel like it has this like ability to structure things, like that Cancerian nature to, you know, make a womb, make a home, make a foundation. But then the Gemini is like the planner and the details of it. So I feel like there's a very like architectural nature to this pair, where it's almost inventive in a way, where it can like just be able to, you know, scheme up new ideas and like make things physical that way. It's like grounding Mercury into the moon, making those ideas physical.
Right.
But the other,
Fostering.
yeah. Um, the other thing I was thinking too, though, is Manilius said that he gave like deity attributions to all the 12 signs. And he said he attributed Apollo to Gemini, the sun god, and then he attributed Hermes to Cancer. And I think that's really interesting because we see this solar connection with Gemini, right? It's almost the summer solstice. It's also the third decan of the sign. And then also the mercurial component of Cancer, which is just interesting because if you think about the Thema Mundi, the rising bound and decan of the Thema Mundi at 15 degrees of Cancer is Mercury ruled. And so there's a really interesting like Mercury lunar solar swap, like with the luminaries, that's happening in these two signs, that just seems like there's a lot of threads that really pull it together.
Right. I think I've said this before on this podcast, but I'll say it again. I think that like Leo really embodies like divine masculine energy, Cancer embodies divine feminine energy, but then Gemini embodies divine androgyny.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that like there is not just divine feminine and divine masculine, that there is something completely different that can still exist and still deserves a spot on a podium because it's so prevalent. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that really gets drawn attention to it with this Antisica pair too.
Yeah.
So our next Antisica pair is Taurus and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
What did you want to open us up with that one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one, and I think I'll just mention it now because we're going to talk about it a lot, but all of the fixed signs are Antiscia and Contra-Antiscia to each other. So they establish this like super like magnetic foundational relationship within the zodiac that creates this like super solid substructure. And we kind of start to see that with Taurus and Leo here. And that's going to appear a lot as we get into all the fixed pairs. But when we think about the homes of the planets here, it's the home of the sun and the home of Venus. So kind of like what Stella and I were talking about before this was thinking about like the beauty of the material world, like beauty as it's expressed, in our search for happiness in life. And because the solar principle is to radiate and shine and share, and that Venusian principle of Taurus is, all about the simplistic natural beauty of the world. It's kind of like this combination is really seeking to like develop a self-expression or develop a way of being that's harmonious, that's positive, that's like seeking, just like radiant beauty in all of the ways that it can.
Right. And I ask like if you think that this pair wants to develop or if it wants to preserve that divine like beauty. Like
Mm,
it wants to find it and keep it exactly how it is and
yeah.
cherish that. Like
Right. And
I
that's also
don't.
like the magnetic pulse of the fixed signs too, right? It's stabilizing the beauty in a way.
Right. And it's like I don't know if Taurus and Leo would be the Antiscia pair to be like, okay, let's like brush up your makeup, like let's do these finishing touches.
Right. It's definitely
Like
Libra Pisces.
I was just about to say I would put that on like Libra Pisces. Like
Yeah.
Taurus Leo is like the beauty that comes with the presence of a tiger, like
Mhm.
something just so gorgeous and so powerful that like you would not think to even change for a
Mhm.
second. And I think that that is something very raw and very natural that comes with this Taurus Leo, but it's so raw and so natural that like it can almost look fake. Like tigers, if we saw like other animals, tigers would be green. But because we can see them the way that they can, they're orange because of
Mm,
our cones in our eyes. And so like to jungle creatures,
mm.
tigers are green and like nearly invisible, but to us, they're this like magical beast.
That's super interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like another interesting connection too is like just thinking about Sun and Venus, like in Venus's synodic cycle with the Sun, how like at her inferior conjunctions, she traces that pentagram in the sky over the 8-year cycle. It makes a perfect 5-pointed star. And of course, that being related to the harmonic cycle of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, and all these like perfect mathematical geometric harmonies that are built into her cycle with the sun. I think the Leo Taurus connection speaks to, just in another way, that principle and that archetype of, the beauty of the natural world, and also like our soul's involvement with it. Like Leo is still ourselves, and so we're supposed to participate and create beauty as well and be, co-creators with that. And I think Leo Taurus just speaks a lot to, being able to perform and to share and to create your art with other people and to share your art with other people.
No, exactly, because what is beauty if it's not witnessed? Like, who can
Yeah.
look at something and say, wow, that's beautiful? What is the phrase? Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Is
Yes,
the
that's
phrase.
so perfect for this pair. I love that so much.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That
that's
is,
beautiful.
thank you. Yeah. I think that was a great end to Leo
Yeah.
Taurus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, Sun Venus lot gives the lot of beauty as well, which is just
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
So lots of
Uh-huh.
threads to these concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, and sorry, actually one more thing. So Taurus is the exaltation of the moon as well. So
Mm.
it's like the moon being that, principle of physical fortune. It's almost like nature wanting to show off its beauty, like having beautiful flowers and meadows and sunsets and like intricate like iguanas and like the creation of all these like insane, animals and trees and plants and flowers, and like nature just like showing off its proportional harmonies that make it so beautiful. I think just is kind of like the theme with this one.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah. So
Yeah, Aries
Aries
Virgo.
Virgo.
You want to start this
This
one?
is, yeah, this is a little bit of a tone change
Yeah.
from Taurus Leo. Like,
Mhm.
we've got the same elements, but I hope that you guys can feel like the kind of discordance that comes with just like the idea of that. And like, I don't want to say discordance in the sense that like it's not perfect, but like something that comes up with this pair is like the amount of effort it takes to get something where you want it to be in terms of how well it's going to perform. And like
Mhm.
Aries Virgo, we had this whole discussion in our last episode about accuracy versus precision with the mutable signs. Aries is what forces Virgo to be precise.
Yeah.
Like Aries is fueling that fire. It's what lets Virgo keep going until it can get the same spot on the bullseye over and over and over again.
Hmm. Yeah, Aries is that hidden fire behind like the archer with its arrow ready to fly, right? And it's like we're still looking at fire and earth. Like you said, we're looking at the same elements with this pair as we are with Leo Taurus, but in this case, it's like we're looking at the Mars Mercury pairing. And what's really interesting about that is this idea of like having a full broad sweep of the signs from the beginning of the northern period, which is Aries through Virgo, but like it's the completion of all of those signs of the spring and summer seasons, which are the seasons of more light. And so there's like this kind of rounding out your experiences of like um, in a way, it's like your knowledge, that your collected knowledge from your external experiences, whereas those internal experiences will be reflected on these pairs from the winter and autumn periods. So I feel like the connection of Mars and Mercury can speak to like that competitive nature, where it's like, I've learned this and I know how to use it. And it's like Aries is supplying that motivation and that fire that Virgo receives and uses, like you said, for precision in that way.
Right. And like, I think that Virgo and Aries like love competition. Like every single
Yeah.
person I can think of who has this Antisica pair will like scream at me for air hockey. And like I love that. Like I'm down with it. But I because I have this Antisica pair between my IC and my sun. And so
Um,
I experience that too with like the like just like need for perfection and like the need to do something to the best of your ability.
mhm.
Like, I don't know if perfection, like, I feel like the word is kind of cliche, but like just the desire to get something to the best that you can get it, like being passionate about something to that degree.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like when we think about like Mercury in traditional astrology ruling over competitions in general and games, and then Mars being the warrior fighter archetype. It's like there's this fusion of in a way it could be a little mischievous, because I feel like Mars might bring out those more like negative sides of Mercury that will definitely make him a little bit more of a trickster and, a game player. And so there's that motivation to win that will maybe make someone, bend the rules a little bit, because with Mars Mercury, like we get lots, like for instance, the lot of theft is one that we get from this combo too. So it's like there's an idea of going to the extremes for the sake of being the victor. And so like I called this pair like the gamer, because I really feel like there's that intent on kind of being, coming out at number one and being able to show off your precision and your accuracy in that way.
Right, exactly. And like this is making me think of board games and
Yeah.
how like board games are some of the oldest like things that we have of human society. Like
Mm,
before we had the wheel, before any of that, like people were playing board games. And I
yeah.
think that that is very fascinating,
Mm,
especially when talking about this pair
yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah, and so like the other thing with this pair is we're looking at the exaltation of the sun in Aries with the exaltation of Mercury in Virgo. And so that combination is really bringing together like the synthesis of like this really powerfully like self-determined, bold expression. And like it's that boldness asserting itself onto the dexterity of Virgo, because when we're looking at the way these signs are communicating, it's Aries seeing Virgo. And that's actually something that we should have mentioned earlier,
Yeah, we
but we'll
did
talk
not get
about it
that.
now because I guess it didn't come up. But anyway, the signs that we're looking at from Capricorn to Gemini are the ones that are seeing the signs from Cancer to Sag. And this is because these signs from Capricorn to Gemini, where the light is increasing towards the summer solstice, are the seeing signs. And then the signs from Cancer to Sagittarius are the perceiving signs. And so the other names that we have are the signs of short ascension for Capricorn to Gemini, and then the signs of long ascension from Cancer to Sagittarius. And we'll explore that principle in depth once we get into Contra-Antiscia. But for right now, all you need to know is that the signs of short ascension are seeing the signs of long ascension, which are perceiving the signs of short ascension. So basically, Aries sees Virgo, and Virgo like perceives Aries, like it knows it's being
Right.
seen.
Well, because so let's think about the idea of the natural world and how that relates to this.
Mhm.
Because if we take when you have more light, when the world around you is increasing in light, you have the ability to see. And sight is arguably the most important sense across the animal kingdom. And when you lose light, you lose sight a lot of the time. And
Mhm.
so you have to resort to other senses. Can you feel? Can you hear? Like, how can you perceive this thing without seeing it? And
Mhm.
so that's another piece to the puzzle that is this Antisica relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, and the final thing I was thinking about with Aries Virgo is that with them both exalting the sun and Mercury, the sun Mercury combination is going to give the lot of the soul's freedom. And so I think it really speaks to that like warrior archetype, like winning reality, like winning the game of life in a way.
Yeah, if there's one thing about Aries, Virgo, Antiscia, it's like I want to be the best because this is about me. Like my success has nothing to do with beating you. And
Mhm.
like that's something that you can get with like Aries and like Scorpio energy. I feel like especially like Scorpio wants to win because they want to beat you.
Yeah.
But with this Aries Virgo, it's like my own standards, whatever houses these fall in, whatever it may be. in this area of life are up to here. And I am going to do what I can to meet these standards time and time and time again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's also because like Virgo's like just about to fall into Libra, like which is the beginning of autumn, and so it's almost like the sun being exalted in Aries, seeing this area where like it's about to be detrimented or fallen, literally, and it's like let's get it all done, like let's shoot for the target, like let's I don't want to like lose my light, right? So it's like this final attempt to like express itself and like have that precision and focus and direction and energy.
You are so right. There is something very frantic about this Antiscia pair, like something that just constantly feels like the clock is running out, like the clock is ticking. It needs to get done. I need to do it. I need to do it. I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that also can come up with the Capricorn Sag a lot too. The feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to move on to Pisces Libra? I'll let
Yeah.
you introduce this one.
Okay. Um, so this pair of Antiscia signs, we have Libra and Pisces, and this is definitely Venusian, like AF. Because we're looking at the home of Venus in Libra and then her exaltation in Pisces. And so right off the bat, we're like looking at this pleasure principle. And on top of, at Pisces being her exaltation, it's already the home of Jupiter. So we're looking at the home of both of the benefics here, which is a very comfortable, very lavish, very extravagant in some senses way
with
of living.
With Mars debilitated in Libra too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have foot off the gas, you're
Mhm.
just kind of cruising.
Yeah, I think it definitely can speak to though the ways like the benefics can do harm too, though. Like too much of anything is not a good thing. And the Libra Pisces is like loves to live in excess of physical pleasure, I think. As a
Yeah,
Libra Pisces native here, guilty as charged, sun and
right.
moon.
Do you have any exact Antiscia?
My moon's closely in Pisces Antiscia to my Libra Mercury, but it's within like 5 degrees, so it's not exact.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
But it's resonant. There's an
It's
energy there. I
still,
mean,
yeah.
the thing is like we're talking about looking at planets that are really in a tight orb, Antiscia, and it's just going to merge the themes like that. They're going to see each other, and if those planets normally couldn't, they do, and you'll know it, and it'll connect their house rulerships, it'll connect the two houses they're in, etc., etc. But on a really general level, there are ways we can make storytelling with the co-presence, or not, sorry, not co-presence, just the presence of any two planets in signs that are Antiscia. They can still connect if they normally couldn't, and they're going to be connecting through these themes we're talking about. So while it's like, yeah, the Antiscia is not exact, it's like I still have 3 planets in Libra and my sect light angular in Pisces, and so the theme is still extremely strong. You know what I mean?
That was something super important that we totally glazed over earlier, is that like the relevance of the planets that are involved in this anticial relationship will totally speak to how loud it is and like the kind of orbs that you want to use and stuff like that. Like using your example, like that's your sect light and your chart ruler, so like of course that's going to be loud in your life. With me, like my Aries sun and my IC, like I have no other planets in Virgo, and like that's my sun, so like of course that's going to be like a constant theme. It's just like constantly feeling like I'm running out of time because like whatever it may be. But then like if it was like, I don't know, like I don't know, you get what I'm saying. You guys understand. I
Yeah.
don't
If
like
you
that
have
part.
like, if it's like your ascendant ruler or your sect light or maybe your IC ruler and it's tied into like your home story somehow, like, I mean, just consider, what relevance these planets have and then think about how they merge through the Antiscia pair. Like, are you looking at, the ruler of your 7th with a planet in your 2nd house and it's speaking about some, connection between your partnerships and how you have to go about making, money or something. It's like there's going to be a connection based off of their locations, their rulerships, and you really have to think about, what are these planets in charge of and what are they doing and how does that merge in with the, story that the sign pair is trying to communicate.
Exactly. And then, like, even without planets, how do these two areas of life relate to one another when you have empty houses? Like, what can this relationship tell you about, if you're reading for yourself, but if you're reading for a client, the native? Like,
Mhm.
what story can you glean from this? And this is just another way to glean information from the natal chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So like what were you gonna say?
I was going to talk a little bit more about like Libra,
Oh
Pisces.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was
So,
so.
okay. So Libra Pisces is very elaborate, like just very embellished, there's a lot of finer detail that comes with that. Like the whole idea of ambiance, I feel like can definitely be incorporated in this because ambient lighting will set such a nice mood, such a great tone. And then, but like, what do you need for ambient lighting? Like, somebody has to turn on the light switch, like, somebody has to set these things up. And like, I think that that can definitely come with the diurnal energy of Libra, as like Pisces wants this like relaxed, this pleasure, and so like Libra like will initiate that, and like Libra will seek it out, or
Right.
Libra will touch up your makeup. It's not going to be like this tiger, this like raw, just visceral beauty that like you don't have to touch. It's beauty that you touch because you want to touch it. It's
Mhm.
beauty that can be more beautiful. And why not make it more beautiful? You know, like Taurus Leo sees a tiger and says, wow, that's gorgeous, I should never touch it. But then like Pisces Libra sees a tiger and is like, wow, that's gorgeous, I wonder what it would look like if I painted its claws. Or, you know what, this would look great with a Cuban link collar, you know?
Yeah, I think like as you were saying about it, like the connection to someone else, like I feel like Aries Virgo is so self-reliant in a lot of ways, whereas like Libra Pisces needs that external connection to validate itself as a mirror for other people. Like I feel like this like the literal idea of reflection is so strong with these signs because we're looking at Libra, which is all about, balance in relationships, and then Pisces is just like the eternally reflecting water, and so there's this like connection between these two that is so I called this one, I had a few names for this one, but one of them was the hedonist. The other one was like patron of the arts, because I think those are like a great like appreciation for art and beauty that accompanies this pair. But the other one I feel like is also the hopeless romantic, because there's this continual desire and longing to have partnership. Because the interesting thing with this pair is it's the exaltation of Venus and Saturn. And those two planets give a lot of marriage, because when you think about that combo, it's like relationships, romance, partnership, intimacy, Venus with the stability, endurance, and like long-term, uh, you know, focus of Saturn. And so I think this connection is like continually exalting. It's continually looking up for and reaching for and striving for that like connection and partnership with other people.
Right, 100%. And like um I mean, Taurus Leo says beauty is in the eye of the whole beholder,
Mhm.
but Pisces Libra says, what is beauty if I can't share it? Like, what is the point of myself witnessing something so gorgeous if it can't be shared with anyone else? Like,
Yeah.
there's almost this like selflessness that kind of comes with it, where it's like, this is meant to be enjoyed by so many people. Like, it disappoints me if I'm the only one who gets to see this beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, like when you think about, and we're gonna talk a little more about like these quadrants, because like Aries, Pisces, Libra, and Virgo all reflect each other, and they make like their own quad group. And
Right,
so
quadrupotence.
yes, that's the whole concept that we'll get into towards the end. But when you think about Aries Virgo, that's going to be the detriment and fall of Venus compared to the domicile and exaltation. And so there's also this contrast where we're looking at Venus being so comfortable in the union and in the partnership, versus Aries Virgo, which seems to be so independent and so you know, so autonomous.
Yeah. And
All right. So are you ready to talk about Aquarius and Scorpio?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So Aquarius and Scorpio, like one of the key words that comes up with this is patience. Like I feel like Aquarius and Scorpio, that is a very patient combination, and it will wait, and it will wait you out. You know, like if we're going to put an enemy in the picture, like I know that that gets put with Scorpio, that like Scorpio will like hold out against Aries in a fight, but like throw Aquarius in there and
They'll wait
like,
for the sweet revenge, no matter
oh
what.
yes, and it will be perfectly timed.
Mhm.
Aqua Scorpio very much rings to me like a Venus flytrap or a pitcher plant might be better, where we have this like brilliant creation of carnivorous consumption that is literally just a plant with a bunch of liquid in the bottom of it, with the fixed water and that invention that is Aquarius,
Yeah.
and then bugs like slip on it. It's so slippery that the bugs literally fall into the stomach of the pitcher plant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you give that analogy, because what I wrote about Libra Pisces and Aqua Scorpio, I call Libra Pisces like the comfy couch, and Aqua Scorpio is like the bed of nails. Because with these two, we're looking at the home of Mars and the home of Saturn. So contrasting the home of the benefics together versus the home of the two malefics. And so the energy exchange between these two signs is like this very intense, and it's not all extremely negative, right? Like I don't want to give this extremely like negative view of these planets. But like we have to acknowledge that like there's like the malefics really have to work well together to make really fruitful, positive things happen with these two signs, which it absolutely can. Because just real quick, like Chris Brennan, like, thank you. Like, we're
Right.
not trying to drag you or any other Aqua Scorpio people out there. We love you. Yeah. I mean, it's like when we're thinking about these signs, like it's the fall of the moon in Scorpio and the detriment of the sun in Aquarius. So it's like it's this very debilitating place for the luminaries, which are the places of life. And so it's this like very dangerous place to like have this Antisica, in the sense that it is destroying something to like transform it, right? It's like trying
Right.
to kill it so that it can bring out its strongest survival tactics.
Right. And like let's think about like the dead of winter, which like we're not quite at the death yet. But
Mhm.
like Scorpio season in the
Yeah.
ancient days, that's when everybody was hoarding food. Like that
Mhm.
is when you are collecting everything to try and make it through the winter.
Mhm.
By Aquarius season, like that supply is starting to dwindle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when people are allotting like very small servings, and that's when you have to get inventive. You know, like
Mhm.
it takes a degree of pressure, a degree of discomfort to invent. You know, like there needs to be some kind of something that could be easier, that could be better for an invention to happen.
Right.
And that is something that came with the Scorpio Aqua. Like
Right.
Scorpio Aqua is not here to reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
Scorpio Aqua is here to figure out how to lab make meat so that we don't die as an entire human population, so that we have meat to eat in the way that it needs to be sustained. I know, meat.
What I was going to say though is, like you were saying, and you know, branching off of what we were saying before about it just being a generally difficult place for life to thrive, you know, these conditions in that time of year force that inventiveness and force that
Resourcefulness.
resourcefulness and like almost creativity, but like not in the same way that Libra Pisces has its creativity, because this is a creativity that's so much more primal and instinctual. Like if you think about like Aqua Scorpio artists, it's going to be like way more like abstract or dark or like what's the word, like visceral, emotions that they're going to be extracting, whereas Libra Pisces are like just the transcendentalists writing about nature and their poems about the sky and the rainbows or whatever, so it's like it's way more real and tactile in that way, I feel like.
Right. Like there's something like the starving artist, I feel like is a really good
I
one
do think that's
because
Aqua Taurus too, which we'll get into, because that
oh,
speaks to
you're so right. That is
like
way
when you think
better.
about the Leo Taurus, Antiscia being like the thriving artist, Taurus Aqua, I feel like is kind of like the artist, like going against society, like doing like starving to just make its own art and go against like the hatred of everyone else and being resilient. But anyway, the Aqua Taurus though, I'm sorry, the Aqua Scorpio, I feel like
And like I don't know if artist is even the right word because there's something very delicate about art, but like this isn't delicate, like this is fragile. Like this isn't just like be careful to preserve it. It's like if you break this, like we will die kind of a thing. Like there's an element of pressure and survival that comes with it. And like, though that might not be the real world situation that you're in, wherever these houses fall in your chart, you might have that kind of mindset where you're like, end all be all. Like, it
right.
needs to be secure.
Yeah.
It needs to be safe. It needs to be able to survive through the winter. This is like a doomsday prepper energy.
Yeah, because the name I gave this one was the misanthropist. So like, someone who hates people, right? And so not that if you have this, you hate people, but it's like it's that principle of like degrading life in general. It's like it's that inner instinct that needs to fight for itself in that way.
Right. And like Aquarius season being like the dead of winter, it's like that energy, it's fixed still. So it's like we don't want spring yet. Like we don't
We
want,
want to rot.
yeah. And like there can be like, let's throw like if we're looking at it in a natal chart or something, like let's say we've got like Venus and the moon there, like that might suck, but like there will be this like just appreciation and like beauty in pain and beauty in the macabre that is not as common. And there's something so extraordinary about being able to find pleasure and find gorgeous things in something that is so far from it to everyone else.
Yeah. Like I have this in 6 and 9. So I feel like in a lot of ways it's about me like having to fight against those normal impulses for like regular jobs or like regular ways of living in general and doing things in the world. The other reason I'm mentioning is because I have my midheaven into the ninth as well, so it's like it's bringing that connection of how I'm being seen out in the world, fighting against this principle of me sustaining what I want to do for my survival, aka me doing what satisfies myself, as opposed to the expected pleasant Leo Taurus, opposite of this, which is just the regular way of doing things.
Right, right. Well, because like Aqua Scorpio can take a no and make it a yes.
Yeah.
Like they'll make it their own yes. Like they'll find a way to live within the no. And so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this.
Do you want to move into
Sag?
our final pair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
So,
a really unique one. This one is honestly, I think, a little bit trickier to assimilate meaning into. But there's a few things that make some connections that I think are really enlightening to this pair.
go ahead.
Oh, okay. So like the first thing I think of is we're looking at the home of Jupiter and the home of Saturn. So we're looking at these outer planet energies, and with Jupiter specifically, we're looking at his preferred domicile in Sagittarius and then the sign of his fall. And so I feel like there's this relentless striving that is searching to, I guess it's almost like, how can I contribute to society? Like that's that Jupiter Saturn principle. But like through the adversity of like me taking, my hardships and life lessons that have, you know, been extremely, made my life full of strife. And then how can I like give back and like condense my wisdom into something easy for like future generations to use, and like prosper off of.
Right. And like, I this is very much like I am laying, like, this is like I walked so that he could run.
Yes, that's it.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, I am laying this foundation
Mhm.
in the hopes that you can take it and do something better with it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this is the teacher who wants their students to do better than they did, the
Hmm.
parent who wants their kids to have a better life than they did.
Right.
And taking what you have, and like with these signs being like so dark in winter too, it's like taking what you have and making something better of it. And like that comes with like these last two pairs, especially with the incorporation of the malefics, of course, but then like Jupiter being there is like this little like beacon, like we've got Scorpio and like Capricorn and Aquarius, and then like Jupiter, like Sagittarius, like just trying to do what it can
Mhm.
to bring you up out of the dark. Like Jupiter, I mean, Sagittarius is able to make a campfire,
Mhm.
and like use that to help you through the cold of winter.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that Sag comes at like the darkest like time of the year in a lot of ways, because it's like it's the darkest, least amount of light, and it's getting less and less and less still. So Sag is like that, I feel like intrinsic reaction to like remembering Gemini, like the beauty of like having the most amount of light and it's still getting longer, right? That opposition is really interesting there. But in this case, when we're thinking about Sag longing for that light and then being perceiving Capricorn, it's like it's already getting the sixth sense that like there's this harder time that's still coming. So like what can I do to like prioritize the moment now to like get myself ready for that? And in that way, I think that Sag perceiving Capricorn is almost like the perceiving the future hardships and the future generations, and like what can I muster up from my skills to prepare for that and what's to come in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And like when we talk about like bearing the torch, like
Mhm.
that is both a literal and a metaphorical thing. Like with the loss of light that comes in the season, like you need fire, you need some kind of light source that you have to come up with.
Mhm.
But bearing the torch is also like a traditional thing. Like
Right.
I'm passing this on to you, like you are now the torch bearer.
Mhm.
And so with this combination, like it's like the grandpa like telling the son or like the grandson like war stories, and then like the grandson ends up in a war and like is able to use and like reflect on like some of the things that their grandpa said. And like something else that comes with this pair is the relationship between hope and despair. Like
Mhm.
in order to have hope for a better future, there needs to be a not so good reality,
Right.
and like in order to dream something up, like there's a reason you're dreaming, there's
Mhm.
a reason that Sag explores, and when you don't have the element of sight, you rely on your other senses, and Sag has, with the animal nature too that comes with Sag can do that. Like Sag can go out at dark in the night and find something to bring back. Like even if they're hunting at night, like they will be able to get something.
Mhm. Yeah, and so like the name I gave to this one was the philanthropist. And so I feel like that principle of trying to build the future really kind of speaks to Capricorn seeing Sagittarius. So like that, pragmatic principle putting itself onto the optimism, and that combination and the fusion of those two energies being that like really productive and, in one way like evolved and mature way of looking back on life to, be realistic, but also like have solid expectations without being like too negative about it, and not being so realistic that like you drown yourself out of making progress.
Right, right. That's a really good point, because in order to build a better future, you still need to have hope in a future.
Hmm.
Like, you can't just be all like listless and nihilistic and like, ah, the winter's never gonna end. Like, I know we keep coming back to the same analogy, but like,
Yeah,
it makes sense.
that's the
Like,
energy here. It really is.
well, and like, that's something so relevant about astrology and like these archetypes, is you have to think about like what was going on in the world like when they were shaped, and like how that is relevant in society today,
Mhm.
because it's still there, it's just not as explicit.
Yeah. I think the other unique thing with this pair too is like the concept of teamwork, because Sag is the first collective sign. So it's the first sign in that mutable evolution of the zodiac, or the third phase of it. And this is where we start to, use our communities and the groups that we're a part of as a resource, and not just, our partner. It's where we come together as a group mind and use those collective ideas and collective resources for collaboration to evolve, as a collective in that way.
Yeah, yeah, because these are the social planets,
Mm.
they are that really is emphasized, like the fact that this is bigger than you,
Yeah.
and the recognition and comfort with that, like being okay with the fact that something is bigger than you are.
Mhm.
And like, when we contrast that with the Gemini Cancer, like Cap Sag says, well, this is something that everybody's going through,
Mhm.
and this is a shared burden. And then Gemini Sag says, well, okay, but I don't care what other people are going through. Like, I need to fix my own situation. Like, I need to look at my own needs. Like, if we all do this as a society, that's fine. But Gemini Cancer is much more personal
Mhm.
than the Cap Sag.
Right. Because I'm sorry, Cancer Gemini is the end of that personal evolution, the first four. And then Sag Cap is the first two of the collective phase. So there's that reflecting between, um, in this sense, like the most evolved self with like the most initial phase of the group minded thinking phase, if that makes sense. Like before it's merged all as a union in Pisces, it's like whoa, okay, we're now like a village, and we have like other villages that are around here too that we're like trading with now. And like we can use each other's resources to help get through the winter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well
Yeah.
said. So
Um,
I think that that's a really good transition into Contra-Antiscia.